The epic battle of Waymo versus Uber and Lyft took a drastic turn I did not expect. Quick side note, I'm at the park right now, playing with Mia. This is Mia. It's Silver Lake right now in California. And I wanted to make this video because of this exact picture. Now this picture was compiled by Obi, an app that studies a lot of data regarding prices for Uber and Lyft and Waymo. And you can see from this picture that Lyft is the cheapest option on average, then Uber, then Waymo. Waymo, based on all the stats, and numbers don't lie, right, is more expensive, statistically speaking, compared to Uber and Lyft. Now this is interesting for a bunch of different reasons I'm going to talk about in this video, because there's a huge article written by TechCrunch where they basically said, to sum it up, Waymo's more expensive than Uber and Lyft, but people, time and time again, are choosing Waymos now over Uber and Lyft, even though they know it's more expensive. And this to me is pretty crazy because a while back, I did a video where I talked about the fact that, in my experience, personal anecdotal experience, Waymo is starting to become cheaper than Uber and Lyft. And one thing I said that when we talk about robotaxis, self-driving cars, Waymos, Teslas, and especially AI taking over humans' jobs, or AI or robots being picked over humans, one thing I said that worried me about Waymo, for all my human drivers out there, is the fact that if Waymo is going to be cheaper than Uber and Lyft, that's what people are going to choose. At least that's what I thought, right? Because you look back in the day when it comes to like Uber Pool, I guess still kind of exists, right? But Lyft got rid of ride sharing in terms of, not ride sharing, like carpooling. But then you look back in the day to Express Pool. For those who don't remember, Express Pool was like the cheapest option with Uber. You could get like a $25 Uber ride for like $8. It was like a third cheaper. And the idea is you'd have to walk to a designated pickup location. It was only usually a few minute walk, and then Uber would come and pick you up. It's called Express Pool. They got rid of it after the pandemic and all this kind of stuff. So looking back throughout history, through ride sharing history, the cheaper, the better, right? Especially for the economy and all this kind of stuff. If there's a cheaper option, there's just going to be less of an impact on people's wallets. People are going to choose that. So my concern was, after taking Waymo for the first time in June/July of 2024, so about a year ago, actually, from the time I'm filming this video, it was always more expensive than Uber and Lyft. Always. But I was like, I'll take it. It's a novelty. It's kind of fun to try it out, do a video about it, that kind of thing. And then it took an interesting turn that before, I used to pull up Uber, pull up Lyft, whichever one was cheaper, I'll just do that one. No big deal. And then it got to the point where I'm like, wait a minute. Now it's pull up Uber, pull up Lyft, pull up Waymo, because I'd say maybe about 40 to 50% of the time, Waymo was cheaper than Uber and Lyft. And that concerned me. I did a video about that. Now, though, after reading this TechCrunch article and looking at this data from Obi and all this kind of stuff, again, to sum all of it up, Waymo is actually, statistically speaking, more expensive, like I said in the beginning of this video, than Uber and Lyft. But, and this is the big but, people are still choosing it over Uber and Lyft. And I gotta be honest, it's tough, but it does kind of worry me for all my human Uber and Lyft drivers. Now granted, Waymo's only in a handful of places in America right now, like San Francisco and LA, like Phoenix, et cetera, et cetera. I think it's like 3 or 4 cities right now. I think Austin as well. So it's only in a handful of cities, 4. But Waymo on average right now is doing 250,000 rides a week. So you're talking about roughly, to use just, quick math, about 1 million rides a month are happening with Waymo. And at first, with Waymo's popularity, I thought it was more of like a fad, a new fun thing to do. Like, think about it. You're like, back in the day it was invite only or a wait list, and then they accepted everybody, and now anyone can order Waymo. Here in LA, it was a big thing. And then in addition to, Waymo's expanded its service area, right? Like back in the day, it was only like a small pocket of LA, and now it's spreading to the whole city. And so at first I thought, people are ordering a Waymo because it's funny, it's fun, it's interesting, it's a bit scary, like I mentioned that. I filmed my first ever Waymo ride, and it's on this channel. All my Waymo videos are listed below in the description. And in that video, I literally had people coming running up to the car because I was sitting shotgun. No one, of course, is driving. It's a Waymo. No one in back, so I'm just sitting shotgun. And I literally, tons of people running up to the car, taking photos of me, videos of me. It kind of felt like I was in like a real-life Black Mirror episode. It was also super trippy, seeing the steering wheel move on its own, like all this kind of stuff. And so as a result of that, I remember thinking like, okay, like it's this kind of curiosity factor that a lot of people are going to be ordering a Waymo just to try it. Just to try it because it's the newest thing right now. It's the new kid on the block, so to speak. But as we all know, the biggest or the best, I think is the best way to word this, the best customer is a returning one. A repeat customer is always best. And I think what's interesting about this, I know it's like a bit of a fireside chat style video, is because so many people now are ordering Waymos. At first I thought it was a fad, it was curiosity, etc., but that's definitely not the case. So for whatever reason right now, I was wrong. I thought that the almighty dollar would be the biggest thing because Waymo's, in my experience, sometimes cheaper than Uber and Lyft. But it turns out, one, that's not the case. Statistically speaking, it's usually, most of the time, way more expensive than Uber and Lyft. And also the standard deviation or the swing of how expensive or not expensive it can be is way more drastic. Which is interesting because you don't have human drivers, right? Like, the reason why you have surge pricing for Uber and Lyft a lot of the times is it's a lot of demand. So Uber and Lyft goes to its drivers and says, hey, we have a ton of demand right now. It's a Friday night, it's a Saturday night, it's a concert. We want to encourage drivers to get out there because we need people to drive. So we're going to pay you more if you drive during a peak hour or demand hour, right? That's why we have surge pricing in a sense, or one of the reasons. With Waymo, though, there's no human drivers. So anyway, that being said, the pricing can fluctuate. It can be more expensive, all this kind of stuff. So then you have to ask the question, why? Why are people willing to spend more money for a Waymo when they know it's more expensive than Uber or Lyft, but they're doing it anyway? Now, one, could it be safety, right? There's been a lot of studies to show. I've done videos about it on this channel. People, of companies who've studied it and all this kind of stuff, where basically there's way less traffic violations, less accidents, less injuries. Basically, right now, it is statistically speaking significantly safer to take a Waymo than to have a human driver. Could it be a safety thing? Could it also be maybe a technology thing? Like maybe people just like the technology. Like if you look at the areas that Waymo's in, like Austin, Phoenix, LA, San Francisco, if you look at these areas, they're very tech-heavy areas. So maybe if Waymo was introduced in maybe a more like rural area or less popular area related to tech, maybe it wouldn't be as popular. I don't know. Again, I'm just throwing out ideas. But I think the big thing that I also wonder at the end of the day is, okay, with all this going on with Waymo and Uber and Lyft, is it the lack of human driver? Is it the privacy? And you see this a lot right now with a lot of psychological studies, that there are people saying, psychologists saying, people are lonelier than ever. They're tied to their phone more, all this kind of stuff. And for me personally, just talking on a personal level, I do feel like that sometimes I want an Uber or Lyft. I want to talk to the driver. I want a human interaction. On the other end, I'll be honest, there's other times I'm like, you know what? It's kind of nice to be alone. There are some times where I'm in a Waymo, I can play music. I also could put on my own music. I get to do that. I could do that the same in an Uber or Lyft, but I could put on whatever songs I want, whatever music I want. Just kind of zone out. I can call a friend even if I want to. So there's something with the privacy going from point A to point B that you don't feel like you have to add on an extra level of social interaction. Sometimes I want that, sometimes I don't. Now, granted, for maybe other people, with everything that's happening right now, maybe that is the benefit. And I feel like it is, because what I wonder is if, let's say, hypothetically, let's say Waymo cars happen to have somebody sit in the driver's seat, but they're not driving, right? So let's say they just had someone there with a clipboard being like, hey, where it's like some guy and he's like, hey, I'm Tom. I'm just sitting here to make sure everything's running correctly. Let's say there was that situation. Would people still prefer Waymos as much? My guess would be no. So there is something I'm very kind of curious about, both from a entrepreneurial perspective, a business perspective. I'm going to even say more on the lines of a psychological perspective, that people are willing to spend more money when typically before, think about when it comes to everything right now, especially given the economy, people want things cheaper, right? A lot of people are, not doing well financially, but people are still willing to spend more money just to be alone. And granted, you could argue a lot of different ways. Again, these are tech-heavy cities. Another thing is, if you look at LA, San Fran, Phoenix, Austin, a lot of people have money. So maybe to a lot of these people taking Waymos, these 250,000 rides happening every week, maybe a lot of these people are saying, hey, yeah, it's more expensive, but I have the money. I'd rather be alone. I want to do a business call. I want to do a conference call. I just need to have a moment to myself. I'd rather just take a Waymo. I don't know. Kind of interesting. I think for me, it's just one of those unique things to see because I've personally experienced Waymos being cheaper. And I thought already at first when I saw that, like, oh, shoot, this is not good for all my Uber drivers and Lyft drivers out there that Waymo's starting to become cheaper because more people are going to take them. But now it's even worse than that. The fact that Waymos are more expensive than Ubers and Lyft, statistically speaking, after all this information was compiled by Obi, and now people still prefer it over Uber and Lyft. What does that mean for the future? I don't know.